Kanye West's partnership with Adidas is hanging by a thread at this hour, but that thread could hold for weeks, if not months. The Claman Countdown has exclusively learned. Sources inside the sports apparel giant say even as the rapper designer ripped the company in an expletive-laced Instagram post after Adidas put the partnership between the two under review, bets inside Adidas are that the company board will wait until a new CEO is named before deciding whether to continue or kill the partnership, which dates back to 2013. Sources also say the as-yet unnamed new CEO replacing Casper Rorsted, who announced in August he was leaving with 3 years left on his contract, might not arrive until early next year. And those same sources tell the Claman Countdown, given companies' fiscal problems and the 61% hit the stock has taken year to date, severing ties with the successful Yeezy line may not be a quick or easy decision. With the corporate world watching to see how Adidas handles the situation without bruising its brand or sales, let's bring in Washington University professor Patrick Rishe, director of the Olin Sports Business Program there. Professor, on the surface, this decision made some look easy. In early October, when Adidas said it would place the partnership under review, West responded on Instagram saying, quote, "F Adidas. I am Adidas. Adidas raped and stole my designs," end quote. So he's trashing the company. Then 3 days later, after making anti-Semitic comments, Instagram locks him out of the platform. Look, one of these is bad enough, but together, what kind of position does this put Adidas in?
It puts them in a horrible position, Liz, and thanks for having me on. I think ultimately, especially this day and age, consumers, Gen Z consumers, Alpha Gen consumers, they care more about what their brands stand for. So if I'm Adidas, I have to look at this so carefully. I understand why they may wait until they choose new leadership, but to me, this seems like a very easy decision to sever ties, even though they do have apparently 4 to 8% of their sales tied to the Yeezy brand. I think they've got to cut him at some point. It's just too bad for the brand.
So, yes, the sources are saying maybe they will wait. Everything's on hold. All the employees are kind of betting, or many of them are betting, according to our sources, that they're waiting for a new CEO. Now, Rorsted doesn't leave until early 2023. Do you think it's better just to rip the Band-Aid off and leave it on his shoulders as he exits?
Personally, I think it does. And, you know, one thing that we saw recently transitioning to the NBA, and we saw Robert Sarver is giving up ownership of the Phoenix Suns. And a lot of that, Liz, was there was a lot of pressure from corporate America as well as from other NBA players. I think if you see a lot of outreach on social media, the power of social media has never been greater than it is today. And I believe that if you see more of a backlash that we haven't quite seen yet on social media with respect to him, I think that's going to expedite his departure. But I agree. I understand why they may wait for new leadership, but I think it's too big of a hit to the brand's image to allow this individual to continue to spew this, in some cases, hateful messages and keep them with the brand. You got to sever that tie, in my mind, as quickly as possible.
Maybe, and I'm all for free speech, but maybe, you know, you leave the brand and the partnership in place. Yes, you may get the sales, but he's obviously prone to making these comments, which could get worse and worse. There was a point recently where he even posted this video of himself. He was at Adidas headquarters in Europe, and he was speaking with a couple of the executives, and he holds up his phone. I think we have video of this. He pushes it in their face and says, "One of your voices, you guys, sounds like this guy." And it was, as you see on the screen, turned out to be porn. It was a porn clip, and the executive said, "Is that porn?" And they tried to push his hand away, and he kept putting his hand in their face, and they were saying, "Come on, well, be professional." But again, there is the brand, and there are sales. His sales are strong. What does a corporation do, even if it's not Adidas, it's somebody else who maybe has another sports star or another celebrity as a spokesperson?
But Liz, what we don't know is how much business is Adidas losing because of this. And again, I go back to younger consumers, and I talked to my class today in St. Louis about this, and many of them said the same thing. They've got to cut ties. So when you have Gen Z and Alpha Gen, I know it was a small sample size from my class, saying they've got to cut ties because we don't want to be aligned with this. What does Adidas really stand for? These are the reasons why they've got to wonder, yes, maybe he's bringing in 4 to 8% of their revenue, but how much revenue is he costing them because people are diverging away from the Adidas brand because of him?
I'm thinking back to 2009 when Gatorade, AT&T, Accenture, Gillette dumped Tiger Woods after his sexual scandals and the situation with the cheating on his wife, et cetera. And they said, we're out. Then you have Nike, on the other hand, sticking with Colin Kaepernick, who, of course, was taking a knee because he felt that it was important to, make his statement about African Americans and how they face off against police. But he was also the guy who wore socks that depicted police officers as pigs. And Nike stuck with him. And not only did they stick with him, they created a commercial around with a bunch of celebrities supporting Colin Kaepernick. And again, free speech, I get it. I get both sides of this, but it didn't push Nike off. I know it's not an apples to apples comparison here.
Well, Liz, one other thing is Live Golf has dominated the storylines this year. And look at these golfers that decided to leave the PGA Tour to go to Live Golf, like Phil Mickelson, like Dustin Johnson. Yeah. And what happened to them? They lost tons of sponsors. So you can evaluate that system however you want. But I think what Kanye has done in the recent months is far worse than Phil Mickelson and Dustin Johnson joining the Live Tour. So again, nothing's apples to apples. But again, if I'm Adidas, I'm cutting him as quickly as possible. He's horrible for the brand at this point.
Well, yeah, and by the way, you talk about sales. Adidas did say itself that its branded Yeezy partnership was, quote, one of the most successful in our industry's history. So let's say they split up. Who do you think would have the stronger negotiating position after that?
Well, ultimately, I do think it's going to be Adidas. They're the longer-standing traditional brand in the sportswear apparel space. Kanye is just an interloper, if you will. He's engaged with them. He's certainly brought them a certain segment, a certain demo. But again, that time has passed, Liz.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of CEOs might be watching this saying, thank God that's not me having to make this decision, because it is a tough one. Professor Rishe, thank you. Great to see you.
Thanks, Liz.
We did reach out, by the way, to Adidas for comment on this story. We have not heard back from them as of yet. But the stock, of course, has been down about 7% since the decision was made to put the partnership on questionable circumstances, as you know.